So this is my recording of my final video, and I would like to start with talking about my numbers display as a form of visual potential. Talking about this one. So I chose to emulate this numbers display to represent a French Bulldog's personality and kind of the division of their traits, with the numbers coming from a survey from French Bulldog owners and what they had to say about their dogs. And so I chose to emulate the more interesting sections in white, with a solid line pointing to the trait. I think these are more interesting because they are more unique to a French Bulldog, and the other traits are kind of things you'd see in any other dog. I added the small blurb not only to fill out the space in that section, but to point out to the reader why I was choosing to go with that design. And so we'll move on to my other numbers, which is down here. And this is probably my most complex visual with the repetitive circles. With the repeating and less saturated smaller circles going outwards. And I tried to clue the reader into what was going on with this short blurb about the repeating content being years of a dog's life. And these sections I made dark to emulate my model, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So in my location displays, I chose to put in two also. Here's this first one, and here's the second one. And this one I added, as a kind of like the, easy thing for the reader to understand. Where did French Bulldogs originate? Probably France. But I feel like it adds a nice white element into this dark section to kind of lighten it up. And for my second one, the meetup at Magnuson Park, I wanted this to go in there just as kind of like a fun fact and to also fill up the space. So I knew I definitely wanted these alternating black and white sections. And I knew that I needed several elements in order to be able to achieve that. And this one isn't my favorite, but I feel like it goes with the space well. And I added this little Frenchy silhouette to kind of tie all those in together and add more of the red, because in my base model and my color models, the red is used more than the blue, but I found myself using a lot of the blue actually, which was surprising. In my appearance displays, I chose to put in two as well, just, adding in all my elements. And this one, the things where we're pointing to where the physical traits of the French Bulldogs, I added the lines to, point out and sort of encode what these things are, instead of just adding a list of traits and a picture of a French Bulldog. I thought pointing to them was very important in this sense. And this bottom appearance display is probably my favorite display of the whole infographic. You can probably guess why. It's because of all the puppies. But as far as visual potential, I made them all the same size. I aligned all the text here to be in a straight line, and just kept my titles standard throughout. In my relationship diagram, this one was pretty tricky, so I definitely wanted this guy right here. So I definitely wanted to show the lineage, and I thought that was best represented in a tree, kind of like a family tree. And so, okay, sorry about that. And so, I enlarged the English, the American, and the French Bulldog slightly, so you could kind of pull them away from these two outer ones. And you can see I dimmed these two labels of their names, so you could say that these dogs are here, but they're not super important. And I got some confused remarks on these dashed lines and how connecting the dog's inner traits. But I felt as though choosing a different style of line shows that they're different enough, and you can quickly or semi-quickly get the information by just reading it a little bit. And my last display here is my time display. And this I chose, I know initially we talked about me going with the vertical display so we could kind of get a more vertical layout, but it turns out that didn't work out, and I needed some quick fill in this middle white section. And so I feel like this still represents time in a well enough manner that you can, because the eye reads from left to right, and you can see the progression from 2 weeks to going to larger, month increments. And even though I took some of the information out, some of the inner information about the stages themselves, I feel like this will give the reader kind of a break, and you can just, the titles themselves are pretty descriptive. So let's move on to encoding. So with my encoding, I used a lot of lines. Even though a lot of this information is basic information about dogs, and you can kind of intuitively guess a lot of it, it's really important. It was really important to me to be able to grab something, point to it, and describe it. Same here, and here too. It was really important for me for you to quickly be able to associate an image with the text that I wanted you to see with that image. And then some of the smaller detail work, especially in this one, like I chose the size of the streets and the size of the road signs to kind of pop out at you, just so you could orient yourself really quickly to where Magnuson Park might be. Otherwise, it would be much harder if you just added these lines without road signs or the north, and so on. So with the color, I knew I wanted to use this color right away because it really sets a happy, friendly tone, and it's not really gender biased in my opinion. The red is kind of leaning towards the peach pink, and the blue is kind of bright, but in my opinion, it's really just a fun color model. And so it's kind of this cream color, this like warm black color, this bright red, and this bright blue. And it's kind of a monochromatic color scheme with the exception of the blue. That kind of is the highlighting and the encoding really that I used. And the red is highlighting some stuff as well. But the triggers we kind of talked about down here, that you got to get the pink from the dog's ears. And the blue is just kind of, blue in nature and animals doesn't really exist. So I think it highlights very well, and it points out things very well. With my text, I chose DIN condensed bold for the titles and for the majority of the subheadings. For most of the text, I used down here I used Myriad Pro, and just one time right up here in this word French, I used Grapholita script. I wish I had used the Grapholita script maybe throughout. I think the word French, you associate French with fancy. I think having that in the script was just a nice little detail, but I might add some more Grapholita script in later. As far as the visual hierarchy goes, I kind of wanted you to start up here, of course, with the large title and the little icons, and then as you make your way down, obviously it's a very vertical display, and as you make your way down, you see the lineage of the French Bulldog, some of its traits, some of their, more base level, more rudimentary traits right here, and of course where they came from. And then you move into kind of the more supplementary facts, like the stages. This one, I don't know about that, if that was the super right place to put this, but and then once you come down here, you get more of the fun supplementary information. So you lead the viewer through the message by starting with the basic info and then moving into more fun things and these cute images at the bottom is a nice little treat. And I tried to accomplish unity and variety through the use of my titles, obviously, and my circles. You can see circles up here, 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 down here. And I feel like since a dog shape, since I use so many images of a physical dog instead of just icons or animations, that I really need something to kind of round out the infographic itself. So you can see, like, while the titles have really hard lines, most of the content is soft shapes such as circles, and the text I feel like is not super pointed as well. Similar to my model in the shapes and overall structure of the infographic. In my model, in the bikes model, it's more of a left and right. How can bikes or what are bikes doing? What can we do for bikes to save us? And this one is kind of like we start, looking at the whole thing, and then we kind of divide here. Then we're, smaller sections here. But for the most part, I feel like it's a kind of take in all the information as you come and not compare and contrast different sides. As far as the layout goes, I think I touched on this. The top is kind of a more basic understanding of the dog itself, and then as you get lower, it's fun facts and cute things about the bulldog, even though the cost isn't super cute. But as far as the alignment goes, it's really denoted by horizontal alignment. You can see these chunky black sections. I really thought in my model that was a great way to split up the information. Your eye wasn't looking at this massive cream colored rectangle, but you could really dive into the deep sections without feeling like you're taking too much on. I ended up fitting, I think I said this, the time when we talked about doing the vertical one, and I was so down with that at first, but then once we started getting into the layouts, I was like, well, this thing takes up more than half of my page, and it would eliminate the use of these black circles, or these black boxes, right here and here. So I made it horizontal, added this guy in, and threw this guy in there. But maybe I could move this guy up towards the title, take out this all together, and make this section just the time. Just a thought. So all in all, I really love this class. I think that it's an incredibly valuable skill as a software person to be able to have some design insight and be able to create your own mock-ups and wireframes. I know throughout this quarter, I was definitely the one creating all the wireframes for my groups and other classes in Illustrator. But I love this skill. I'm going to keep my Illustrator on my machine, and thank you for an incredible quarter and the amount of knowledge that you were able to pass on to me. Thanks, Marilyn. Thanks, Sherry. Mwah.